4 decades on from the Prague Spring and 60 years after the communist takeover in Czechoslovakia, EuroNews invited the writer, filmmaker and former political prisoner Jiri Stransky to talk about those times. Stransky is now involved in teaching school children about their country's communist history in a project called Stories of Injustice. He was born in 1931 into an influential Prague political family. His grandfather was Prime Minister in the 1930s. When the communists took over in 1948, he was banned from studying and in 1953 was arrested on false charges of spying. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison, much of which he spent working in a uranium mine. It was there, literally underground, he found the inspiration to write. EuroNews met the former PEN Club chairman at the Czech PEN Club in Prague. Today, it's March 2008. But what do you remember of March 1968? The abolition of censorship, step by step. The first free publications. Tell us about it.
Well, to be honest and very open with you, already at the very beginning of the year 1968, already in January and February, I warned everybody I knew, saying that this experiment, trying to install a kind of socialism with human face, as it was called at the time, will not have a happy ending. The communists are not able to reform themselves. Therefore, in 1968, I warned all my friends and comrades who I knew from my former time in prison, telling them that the Soviet Union will not be able to let our country go. I knew it would not be possible. If the Soviet Union would have let us withdraw from the Warsaw Pact, then all the other countries of the region would have taken the decision for a change in the system as well. Hungary, Poland and so on. This was very clear. But in the euphoria of the Prague Spring of '68, no one wanted to listen to my warnings, or to believe me.
Was there maybe at least one short moment in 1968 when you thought to yourself, the wind of change is blowing, I can breathe, write, publish?
Well, yes, it's true that in 1968 censorship was abolished step by step. For me as well, '68 had an impact. Suddenly everybody approached me, because until then I was one of the totally forbidden authors. It was a time when everybody started to write, to publish. Censorship was abandoned. Suddenly we had the feeling that everything was possible. We founded the so-called K231 Club, the club of former political prisoners.
You were in prison twice. The first time was before 1968. Tell us about your first prison experience.
At the time in prison, I met all those authors and writers who I loved and admired. They were also imprisoned. I met them and we became very close to each other. We called each other by our first names. All those writers were just in prison because they were writers, nothing else. I was just 21 years old, and it was then in prison that I took the decision to become a writer myself and started to write in prison. That was dangerous and difficult. But in the uranium mine where I had to do the forced labor, we worked sometimes alongside some civilians. From time to time I was able to find a courageous civilian miner who
smuggled out your papers.
He smuggled out also letters to my family and wife. If they discovered that, they would have sent him to prison for 15 years.
And then the regime accused you of being a spy in the 1950s.
Not just that, it was terrible. They pretended that some illegal organization had sent me to West Germany to take a course in spying and assassination methods, and that I had smuggled a shortwave radio transmitter into Czechoslovakia and hidden it somewhere. No one knew where. They almost beat me to death. They wanted to force me to make up some details about this invented shortwave radio transmitter. But I didn't know anything. Over a 6-day period, they beat me in an isolation cell. I underwent water torture. They beat me up in a really terrible way.
In 1974, once again, you were put in prison. Why? Can you tell us how the secret police put pressure on you?
I was not the only political prisoner. There were quite a number, among them Václav Havel. They tried to break us, and therefore they tried to pressure us to sign a document of collaboration with the secret police. But when they finally understood that we would never, ever collaborate, they thought the best thing would be to send us back to prison again. Every month they called me and asked me again if I would sign, but I refused, always.
To come back to the Prague Spring, what can Europe learn from what Czechoslovakia experienced in 1968?
Well, in my opinion, Europe has already learned its lesson, at least partly. The experience and reality of terms like democracy and freedom look completely different when they are used and abused in a political system ruled by communists, rather than democracy and freedom becoming reality in a really free state.
Zur Sache kommt, ja.